I know exactly how it is when you wake up in the morning and feel that weight on your chest, that feeling that everyone seems to be following a map that you never received. You look out the window and see people walking with purpose while you're still trying to understand where you should be going. It's like being in a boat without oars in the middle of an ocean, while everyone around you seems to navigate easily through their lives. That feeling of being lost is not strange to me. I've been in that place where every decision seems impossible, where every path seems wrong even before you take the first step. It's like standing at a crossroads where all the signs are in a language you can't read. You know you need to choose a direction, but the fear of choosing the wrong path is sometimes so great that it seems safer to simply stand still. And then come those questions that you repeat to yourself while looking at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. Why does everyone seem to know what they're doing except me? Or, did I miss some important life lesson where they explained how everything works? These are questions we all ask, even those who seem to have all the answers. The truth is that these people also feel lost sometimes. They've just learned to hide it better. Have you noticed how curious it is that even using GPS on the phone, sometimes we still feel lost? We can know exactly where we are on the map and still not know where we are in life. That's because being lost is not just a matter of location, but of meaning, of purpose, of connection with something bigger than yourself. I remember observing the stars one night and realizing that, in a way, they are all also lost in infinite space. However, together they form constellations that for millennia have guided travelers. Sometimes what seems chaotic up close reveals a surprisingly beautiful pattern when you take a step back and observe the complete picture. Your life can be like that too, you know? Those moments when you're driving and suddenly realize you've been so lost in thoughts that you don't remember how you got there. Or when you try to remember someone's name and it simply disappears from your mind, only to appear hours later when you're no longer looking for it. The human mind is curious like that. Sometimes we find the way precisely when we stop looking so desperately. People rarely talk about how scary it is to not be sure of the next step. How difficult it is to admit that we don't know what we're doing. How lonely it can be when it seems that everyone around has a well-defined plan while you're improvising each day. But believe me when I say, most people are improvising too. The difference is just that some have become better at pretending they're not. Have you ever felt that restlessness that comes from nowhere? That feeling that something is missing, even when your life seems to be in order? As if there were a voice whispering that you should be somewhere else, doing something else? Many people try to silence this voice with distractions, excessive work, or even substances. But this voice, my friend, is not your enemy. It may be the first sign that something new is wanting to be born in you. You know that feeling of relief when you finally admit to being lost and ask for directions? There's a liberation in this, isn't there? A weight that lifts from your shoulders. Because maintaining the appearance that we know exactly where we're going consumes precious energy. It's exhausting to pretend we have all the answers. There's a refreshing honesty in simply saying, I don't know, and that's okay. I've observed how children deal with being lost. They don't carry the same weight we do. For them, being lost can be an adventure, an opportunity to discover something new. At what point did we stop seeing the unknown as an adventure and start seeing it as a threat? Perhaps there is wisdom in rediscovering that childlike gaze that finds wonder in the unknown instead of fearing it. Rivers don't question their path when they encounter a rock in the middle of their journey. They simply flow around it and continue their way to the sea. Water doesn't have a detailed plan, it just follows the path of least resistance, trusting that it will eventually arrive where it needs to be. There is an ancient wisdom in this natural flow that we, with our elaborate plans and rigid expectations, often forget. This feeling of being lost that you carry is not a defect or fault of yours. It's a portal, an invitation to something new. And between us, often the greatest transformations begin exactly at that point where you feel most disoriented. As if the universe first needed to completely disorient you before showing a new direction that you would never have considered before. You are exactly where you need to be, even if right now you can't see why. Have you ever observed how a seed needs to be completely buried in the dark before finding its way to the light? It goes through a period where it seems that nothing is happening. However, it is exactly in this darkness that its roots form, seeking nutrients and establishing its foundation. Just like this seed, your moments of greatest disorientation might be precisely when you are creating deeper roots for your future growth. The seasons of the year teach us a lot about the natural cycles of loss and finding. In autumn, trees do not resist the falling of leaves. They do not desperately cling to what needs to depart. On the contrary, they let go, allowing the wind to take what has already completed its cycle. Winter may seem like a time of loss, but it is actually a time of essential preparation for the new life that will come in spring. Your moments of feeling lost may be your personal winter, preparing the ground for your next blossoming. Think about how sunrise works. The darkest night always comes before dawn. And this moment of transition is gradual, isn't it? First comes that soft light on the horizon, almost imperceptible. Then the sky slowly changes color. Darkness doesn't disappear all at once. Similarly, finding your way rarely happens in a flash. It's a gradual process of small clarities emerging on the horizon of your consciousness. When you're cooking a meal and following a recipe for the first time, there's always that moment of doubt. The ingredients are all mixed together, it looks like a mess, and you wonder if it will really transform into the beautiful dish you saw in the picture. But if you trust the process and continue following the steps, something magical happens. What seemed like chaos begins to take shape, to gain aroma, to transform into something delicious. Your life has a recipe too, even if you don't have access to all the ingredients at once. I remember observing ants when their path is interrupted by some obstacle. At first, there is confusion, they seem to run in circles. But soon they begin to explore, to test new paths until one finds an alternative route. Soon, all of them are following this new path as if it had always been the original plan. They are not paralyzed by the interruption. Instead, they adapt. Nature does not know the concept of being lost, only of finding new paths. That feeling of being lost in the supermarket looking for a specific product. You walk through the aisles, get frustrated, but often end up finding other useful items that weren't on your list. How many valuable discoveries in human history happened when someone was looking for something completely different? Penicillin, the microwave, even the chocolate chip cookie, all were discovered by accident, by people who were lost in their original searches. When we learn to ride a bicycle, balance doesn't come from rigidity, but from constant small adjustments. In fact, if you try to stay completely still on a bicycle, you'll fall. Balance comes from movement, from continuous adaptation. Similarly, finding your way in life doesn't come from following a rigid and perfect plan, but from making small adjustments as you move forward, learning to balance amid changes. Ancient navigators used the stars to orient themselves on the open sea. But on cloudy nights, when they couldn't see the stars, they used other senses. They felt the direction of the wind, observed the behavior of seabirds, noticed the color and temperature of the water. They developed a deeper sensitivity precisely in moments when their usual navigation methods weren't available. Your periods of disorientation may be developing new senses and capabilities in you that you would never have discovered otherwise. Have you noticed how rivers never follow a straight line? They meander, make curves, sometimes even seem to go backward, but always find their way to the sea. They don't fight against geography. They embrace it, work with it, let it shape their course. And in this seemingly chaotic process, they create some of the most beautiful scenery that exists. Your path also doesn't need to be linear to be beautiful and reach where it needs to. The nomadic tribes of the desert have for centuries found their way in landscapes that seem identical to untrained eyes. They don't see the monotony that we would see. They see subtleties, small differences in the terrain, almost invisible signs. They develop this ability precisely because they live in an environment where it's easy to get lost. Similarly, your moments of disorientation may be training you to perceive nuances and signs that people with easier paths would never notice. When we look back at our own history, often the periods that seemed most confusing and disorienting at the time reveal themselves as crucial turning points. That job you lost that seemed like a complete disaster, but opened space for a much better opportunity. That relationship that ended and broke your heart, but freed you to find a more compatible love. What seems like a detour often reveals itself to be the main path all along. In certain ancient traditions, there exists a concept known as the dark night of the soul, a period of profound spiritual disorientation that precedes a great transformation. Shamans and mystics understood that this feeling of being lost was not a mistake or failure, but a necessary component of the journey. It was the crucible where transformation happened. Like the seemingly chaotic cocoon where the caterpillar completely dissolves before recomposing itself as a butterfly. There is a deeper intelligence working within your feeling of being lost, an intelligence that knows exactly what it's doing, even when your conscious mind cannot see the complete picture. There is a simple secret that I have discovered over the years. Feeling lost is not a state to be avoided, but a portal to be crossed. It's like when you shake a snow globe. For a moment, everything becomes blurry and chaotic, but then when the flakes settle, you can see the landscape with renewed clarity. The periods of confusion in your life are like that moment of agitation, preparing you for a new vision that would not be possible without this apparent chaos. A practice that can transform your experience of being lost is to welcome questions instead of despairing for answers. Answers close doors, but questions open them. Try keeping a small notebook where you write down your questions, not to answer them immediately, but to honor them. What am I learning from this confusion? Or, what might be becoming possible now that would not be possible if I were following my old path? You will be surprised at the seeds these simple questions will plant in your mind. When we feel lost, our instinct is usually to accelerate, to do more, to frantically search for a way out. But have you noticed how it's precisely when you stop looking for the keys you've just lost that they appear? Pausing has a transformative power. Dedicating just 10 minutes a day to simply sitting in silence, without trying to solve anything, can create a space where deeper intuitions finally find a gap to emerge to the surface of your consciousness. Nature teaches us that periods of dormancy are essential for subsequent growth. A seed needs to rest in the soil before germinating. Bears hibernate to conserve energy during winter. Trees pause their visible growth to strengthen their roots. The next time you feel stagnant or lost, ask yourself, what kind of invisible strengthening might be happening in me now? Growth is not always visible to the eyes. A powerful discovery is realizing that you may be lost at the level of the mind, but your body always knows where it is. It is always fully present here and now. Therefore, when mental confusion becomes oppressive, turn your attention to physical sensations. Feel your feet on the ground. Observe your breath. Touch objects around you and notice their textures. This simple practice, which I call anchoring in the body, can transform moments of existential panic into pauses of momentary clarity. Have you noticed how often we try to solve complex life problems with the same mentality that created them? Einstein said something about this. When you feel truly lost, sometimes the necessary transformation is not finding the right path, but completely changing how you understand what a path is. As if you were trying to find a path by land when you actually needed to learn to navigate by water, or even to fly. A simple but profound change is to replace the question, why is this happening to me, with what is this teaching me? The first question puts us in the position of a victim, the second in the position of a learner. And the universe has a curious way of continuing to give us the same lesson, in increasingly intense ways, until we finally learn it. The patterns that repeat in your life are like a patient but persistent teacher, hitting the same key until the melody is recognized. I have observed over the years that many people fear uncertainty so much that they prefer to remain in harmful situations, simply because they are familiar and predictable. But think about this, every birth requires that we leave the safety of the known. The chick must break the shell. The butterfly must abandon the cocoon. The plant must break the seed. There is no transformation without the temporary discomfort of abandoning the familiar. Your feeling of being lost may simply be the birth process of a new you. The practice of compassionate curiosity can completely transform your experience of disorientation. Instead of judging your feelings of being lost, observe them with the gentleness of a curious scientist. Interesting, I'm feeling completely directionless today. How exactly does this sensation feel? Where do I feel it in my body? What is it trying to show me? This gentle distancing creates a space between you and the problem, allowing new perspectives to emerge. One of the most powerful tools I've discovered is what I call pattern cartography. In a quiet moment, take a large piece of paper and map the recurring patterns in your life. Relationships that repeat with different people, work situations that always seem to end the same way, fears that continue to resurface. When we see these patterns drawn in front of us, we often realize that we are not really lost in unknown territory, but walking in circles in very familiar territory. And this awareness is the first step to choosing a different path. There is a curious and profound connection between the moments when we feel most lost and the great transformations of our lives. If you look back, you will probably notice that your biggest leaps of growth did not come from periods of comfort and certainty, but from seasons of confusion and questioning. It's as if the feeling of being lost was the fertile soil where the seeds of reinvention need to be planted. Disorientation is not a deviation from your path. Often, it is the path itself. Quantum physicists have discovered something fascinating about the nature of reality. At the subatomic level, particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until they are observed. Similarly, when you feel lost, perhaps what is happening is that you are experiencing a state of superposition. In your own life, multiple versions of yourself and multiple possible futures coexisting until you make a conscious choice that collapses the wave of possibilities into a new defined reality. Your state of confusion is, in fact, a field of infinite possibilities. The deepest transformation we can make is to recognize that being lost is not the opposite of being on the right path. It is often an essential part of it. In all the great stories of transformation, the hero must first get lost, enter the unknown, face chaos. Think of the ancient stories, Jonah in the belly of the whale, Dante lost in the dark forest before beginning his divine journey, the chosen people wandering in the desert before finding the promised land. The pattern is consistent across times and cultures. Disorientation is not an obstacle to your destiny, but a necessary initiation to reach it. Now let's talk about concrete things you can start doing today. The first is something I call the 5-minute ritual for when the feeling of being lost becomes oppressive. Stop what you're doing. Breathe deeply 3 times. Place your feet firmly on the ground. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. This simple exercise brings you back to the present moment, where answers are more likely to appear. Start a redirection journal. Each night, before sleeping, write down 3 questions. What surprised me today? What small thing did I learn? And what touched me emotionally? You don't need to write extensive answers, just a few lines for each one. This simple habit trains your brain to begin noticing patterns and connections that previously went unnoticed. Many people discover that after a few weeks of practicing this, they begin to see signs and directions that were invisible before. The practice of the minimum viable decision can be transformative when you feel paralyzed by indecision. Instead of trying to solve your entire life at once, ask yourself, what is the smallest decision I can make today that would move me in the direction of more clarity? Perhaps it's making a phone call you've been postponing, organizing a space in your home, or simply taking a walk without your phone. Often, it's through these small actions that the big directions reveal themselves. Create an imaginary council of mentors. Think of 5 people, real or fictional, living or deceased, whom you deeply admire. When facing a difficult decision or feeling lost, take a moment to sit in silence and ask, what would each of these mentors advise me in this situation? You'll be surprised by the wisdom that emerges when you access different perspectives within yourself. A powerful practice is what I call letting go to receive. Identify something in your life that you're holding onto with too much attachment. It could be a relationship that no longer works, a job that drains your energy, a belief about yourself that limits your potential, or even material objects that are occupying physical and mental space. Choose one thing to consciously release this week. The act of creating space often invites new possibilities into your life. When we feel lost, we frequently isolate ourselves, exactly when we need connection the most. A practical step is what I call calibrated disclosure. Choose a person you trust and share with them exactly what you're feeling without filters. Not to seek advice or solutions, but simply to be witnessed in your truth. Say, I'm feeling completely disoriented right now, and I just need someone to know that. There is enormous power in simply naming out loud what we are experiencing. Have you tried mapping your flow moments? These are those moments when you lose track of time because you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. During a week, pay special attention to when this happens. It might be cooking, fixing something, talking with a specific type of person, solving problems, creating art. Write down these moments. They are like small compasses pointing in the direction of your essential nature, indicating where your energy flows most naturally. A simple but powerful tool is what I call the 1-week experiment. When you're considering a change of direction but feel unsure, create a limited experiment. For example, if you're thinking about changing careers, you don't need to quit your job immediately. Instead, dedicate 1 hour a day for a week to explore this new field. If you're questioning where to live, spend a week exploring a new neighborhood. Reducing the scale of change diminishes fear and allows you to collect real information before making bigger decisions. Many people discover that volunteering can be transformative when they feel lost. There's something deeply reorienting about focusing on helping others. It doesn't need to be a big commitment. It could be a few hours at a local food bank, helping an elderly neighbor with shopping, or offering your skills for a cause you value. Often, when we stop obsessively looking at our own problems and connect with greater needs, a new clarity naturally emerges. A practice I strongly recommend is creating what I call attention markers in your day. Choose routine activities such as brushing your teeth, waiting for the elevator, or waiting for water to boil for coffee, and transform them into reminders to return to the present moment. When you brush your teeth, really feel the brush, the taste of the toothpaste, the water in your mouth. These small moments of mindfulness, scattered throughout your day, create little islands of clarity that can anchor you when you feel adrift. Have you tried the free writing technique to navigate periods of confusion? Take a notebook and write continuously for 15 minutes, without stopping, without censoring, without worrying about grammar or punctuation. Start with the phrase, "I feel lost because," and see where it takes you. Don't stop writing even if it means saying, "I don't know what to write," repeatedly until something new emerges. Often, our conscious mind is blocking insights that our deeper mind is trying to communicate to us, and this exercise can bypass those blockages. Something we rarely discuss is how our bodies carry our disorientation. The tension in the shoulders, shallow breathing, tight stomach, all are physical reflections of our mental confusion. A transformative practice is to do what I call a daily body inventory. Spend 3 minutes simply scanning your body from head to toe, noticing where you're holding tension. Then spend another 3 minutes consciously breathing into these areas, imagining that your breath can flow directly to these points of tension. This simple ritual can transform your relationship with uncertainty by preventing it from accumulating in your body. When we are lost, we often look for big signs or dramatic revelations. But in my experience, clarity usually comes through what I call whispers, not shouts. Train yourself to notice small synchronicities, the book that falls open to a specific page, the partially overheard conversation that seems strangely relevant, the recurring dream, the name you keep encountering. Keep a small notebook to record these whispers. Over time, you may begin to perceive a pattern emerging, a direction being suggested through these subtle signs that most people ignore. We have reached an important point in our conversation. Looking back, see how we have already traveled a path together, from understanding that being lost is a deeply human experience, through recognizing that this state contains seeds of transformation, exploring ideas that can change our relationship with disorientation, until reaching the concrete practices that we can incorporate into our daily lives. Like threads of different colors that together form a fabric with a meaningful pattern. This journey we have made reflects something important about life itself. It rarely moves in a straight line. It meanders, turns around, sometimes seems to go backward, but is always moving toward its unique blossoming. Like a river that, despite all its diversions and curves, always finds its way to the sea. There is an intelligence in the very flow of life that knows where it is going, even when our conscious mind feels completely disoriented. You may have noticed a recurring theme in everything I've shared. The wisdom you seek is already within you. When I say that you are exactly where you need to be, I am not offering empty consolation. I am pointing to a profound truth about how human growth happens. It's not something we can force or completely control, just as we cannot force a seed to germinate faster. We can only create the right conditions: attention, kindness, curiosity, patience, and trust the natural process of unfolding. The practices I've shared are not just techniques to fix the feeling of being lost. They are gateways to a different way of relating to life as a whole. A way that embraces uncertainty as an integral part of the journey, that sees value in not knowing, that recognizes disorientation as an invitation to a deeper level of discovery. When you begin to live this way, periods of confusion lose their power to paralyze you. A simple but powerful truth I've learned is that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. We often exhaust ourselves trying to solve our moments of disorientation, as if it were a puzzle with a single correct solution. But life is more like a dance, fluid, expressive, improvised. And in a dance, there are no real mistakes, only new movements that weren't in the original plan. Your willingness to dance with the unknown is more important than finding the right step. Something I've repeatedly observed is how we are stronger and more resilient than we imagine. Think about the difficulties you have already faced throughout your life. Moments when you thought you couldn't go on, when the confusion or pain was too great to bear. Yet here you are, still breathing, still seeking, still growing. This is not coincidence or luck. It's evidence of the extraordinary strength that resides in you, even when you cannot feel it. Real hope doesn't come from pretending we will never feel lost again. It comes from knowing that we can feel completely lost and still be on the right path. It comes from understanding that disorientation is not a deviation from the journey, but an essential part of it. The seasons of life include both winters and springs. Tides rise and fall. Breath goes in and out. Life moves in cycles, not straight lines, and there is wisdom in harmonizing with this natural rhythm rather than resisting it. A perspective that transformed my own life is understanding that we don't need to have all the answers to take the next step. We only need enough clarity for that single step. And then, from that new place, the next step will become visible. It's like walking at night with a flashlight. You can't see the entire path to the final destination, just the next few meters ahead. But if you keep moving step by step, you will eventually arrive where you need to be. Have you noticed how even in the darkest moments, there are small sources of light guiding us? The unexpected smile from a stranger. A phrase in a book that seems written especially for you. A memory that emerges bringing exactly the strength you needed. A dream that offers a perspective your conscious mind couldn't find. These are not trivial coincidences. They are reminders that there are invisible currents of support carrying us, even when we feel completely alone. There is an ancient practice called kintsugi in Japan, where broken vases are repaired with gold, making the cracks not something to be hidden, but the most beautiful and valuable part of the object. Similarly, the moments when you feel most broken and lost can become, with time and gentle care, the most precious and distinctive parts of your story. The scars we carry are not marks of failure, but evidence of our capacity for healing and transformation. The deepest truth I can share with you is that there is a purpose in your disorientation. It is not random, not a cosmic error, not a punishment. It is a calling, a call to grow in ways that would be impossible if you always remained in familiar and comfortable territory. It is an invitation to awaken to broader dimensions of your own existence, to unfold aspects of your being that would remain dormant in more predictable circumstances. For a moment, I would like to share something that few people realize. Throughout time and across various traditions, there has always been an understanding that there is a larger pattern operating in our lives, a tapestry being woven with threads that we cannot fully see from our limited perspective. The moments when you feel most lost are often moments of profound realignment with your truest purpose, as if the universe first needed to dismantle your old structures so that something new and more authentic could emerge. Viewed from this expanded perspective, you were never really lost, just in transition. As we say goodbye, take this certainty with you. The feeling of being lost is not your enemy, but a guide in disguise. It is the fertile space where new possibilities are born. It is the portal through which fuller versions of yourself can emerge. Trust the process even when you cannot see the complete path. Keep taking small steps with courage. Allow yourself to be surprised by what is waiting on the other side of confusion. And always remember, you are exactly where you need to be, preparing to become who you are meant to be.